Welcome to LollieTasking with ADHD. I am your host, Dr. Lola, a multi-passionate mom of three, a physician, and an ADHD life coach because, like most of you amazing women listening, I have ADHD. Join me as we chat about how ADHD affects our lives and learn strategies to help us all thrive, not just survive, with ADHD so we can live the life we want while accomplishing all our goals. Let's get started.
Hello, LollieTasking. Again, I'm Dr. Lola, a physician, a transformation life coach for all women, and an executive function ADHD trained coach. My goal is to help women who have had busy lives or busy brains that sabotage their purpose live a fulfilled life so they can show up in their full potential like we all want to do without being overwhelmed or have time. And they can actually give that time for joy, what they really want to do. Okay. So, you guys know, then I have a fantastic guest for you guys. And because I love you, I have brought the Caroline Maguire. If you don't know her, you will know her. Go ahead and write it down. Okay. So, let me tell you a little bit about my dear friend, Caroline Maguire. So, Caroline is the author of this amazing book called Why Will No One Play With Me? Just go ahead and go on your Amazon right now, get an Audible, just go ahead and get it because you will need it. She is a founder of the comprehensive SEL training methodology for parents, clinicians, and academic professionals on how to cultivate emotional regulation, emotional intelligence, social awareness, and responsible decision-making skills. Who doesn't want that for their kids? She's also the founder and director of the Fundamentals of ADHD Coaching for Families training curriculum at ADD Coaching Academy. You guys know that's where I was trained, the best coaching program for ADHD in the country, hands down. A coach training program accredited. You know, I have to put my little spill with it. It's a prolific media contributor, columnist, and sought-after lecturer and workshop facilitators on various topics related to social, emotional, and behavioral learning. She's originally from Cape Cod, and she now lives with her husband and two children in the Boston Metro West area. Welcome to the show, Caroline. I'm so happy to have you.
I'm so happy to have you, be here because I just immediately felt this zest and this zing from you. And your mission is so my mission. And so you don't always meet people where you're like, we are simpatico, and I remember just, not to be strange, but like when I got home from the conference, you were one of the people I told my husband about. And, he's always like, who? Like tonight, I was like, you're covering the kids. Remember, I'm going on this podcast. And he said to me, who? And I tried to explain again. And he was like, so you're teaching doctors? And I was like, just at 8 o'clock, take over from the sitter. Okay. Like, just do it.
Just follow the rules. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey?
So my ADHD journey or my journey with social skills?
Summary of both, because I feel like they kind of intertwine a little bit.
They do. So I was a kid who was, bullied really badly. Truthfully, I try not to think about it, but I definitely, had physical assault on me, verbal assault. I'm an only child. My parents didn't really know quite what to do with me because they knew I was really smart, but they couldn't figure out why I couldn't perform as well as they expected or as well as society expected.
Right.
And they really tried to help me with the friendship stuff. I was definitely like last picked, but I had this weird quality where I was last picked, but I was literally like, this sports stuff doesn't seem to be working out, so we can just stop anytime. Like I was that kid. I was like, why do we keep doing this? It doesn't work out. But I was very lucky in that I had theater and I was really, really good at theater. And so I did have that place of strength and passion. And I really think that's what saved me. I started working on my social skills. I knew that I was sort of different and a little strange. I knew that I needed to like change the way I approach things. And I was very lucky in that some teachers helped me, and I read social cues very well. I just couldn't always follow through. And I had that very ADHD trait of like, if I love you, I love you.
I love you.
If I don't love you, at that time, I really didn't pretend. Like, I really was like, I really don't love you, you know? So I really did turn things around. But I really, my parents actually got me tested, which in the 80s was very rare.
Wow. Yeah.
And the hospital, very famous in Boston, that tested me said, she's a girl, so don't worry about it. Remediate her learning disabilities, because like I was diagnosed with dyslexia and stuff, and I was older, right, to still have these problems. Remediate that. You got to get on this and that right away. But she's a girl, so yes, she has ADHD, but like she'll outgrow it. And my mom was waiting and waiting. And in the 90s, Ned Hollowell spoke in my hometown on Cape Cod, and my mom went to see him.
Oh, wow.
And she did try to talk to me about it. I was at college by then. And I was like, I'm not going to be like those Ritalin kids. So like, why are you talking to me about this? And it was really when I worked for Johnson & Johnson, and they were launching a drug called Concerta. And I sat in a ballroom and I listened to physician after physician describe this condition of ADHD, because they do train you very well. And I was like, that's me. That's me. And I was sitting next to my friend Ken, who's actually friends with people in our world, like Brendan Mahan. And I said to him, do you think that's me? And he was like, no, it's you.
Of course it is.
And I went upstairs and I called my mother from the hotel room and I said, Mom, don't I have that ADHD thing? And she was like, oh yeah, you know? And she by then had been reading and stuff and like kind of doing her own little journey on, you know, trying to figure out how she could reach me. And then I started getting help. And so Caroline, I always joke, Caroline 1993 is not Caroline today, because I have so many systems and interventions in my life. But at that time, you know, I would run out of gas. I was, you know, not living up to my potential.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's like the common thread we see in ADHD children, ADHD adults, in ADHD as a whole. And that's why I actually, when people are like, why does a pediatric cardiology also coach? Because I love my job. I'm not going to quit being a pediatric cardiologist. But I just feel like a lot of times when people realize I'm a peds cardiologist and I have ADHD, they're always like, it doesn't connect. And I'm like, it's because I have systems. And I'm trying to teach people, if you have systems, you can actually live up to your full potential. But what we're really here today is actually something that is near and dear to us all as mothers, our kids. When I saw Caroline at the conference, so Caroline and I met at the ADHD conference in November. Yeah, November. And I remember us talking, and as we were talking, I literally had tears in my eyes because there were some social things that just happened in my family. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I need you to come on my podcast because I need you to tell us or to help us. And she was like, come on, my book, get on. This is my book. And let me tell you guys know I don't read. I say that all the time. I listen to Audible. I started listening and I was like, oh no. And I usually listen when I drive and stuff. And I found myself parking and like typing in my phone, like taking notes. And I was like, you know what? Stop it. I ordered a book from Amazon for the first time in years. And I was like, and I basically like hyper focused on it. And I have so much questions for her. But today is dedicated to other people because I feel like I have access to Caroline in it, and I want people to just get a little bit of her. Obviously, she can't teach all of the book in a, you know, 30 minutes hour session. But one of the biggest thing that stuck out to me in the book, and there were so many like good things, Caroline, was when you said, and it's so simple, but it's more reframing. You kept saying executive function weakness. A lot of times we say executive dysfunction, and it reframed my brain because when you say executive dysfunction, at least from a medical standpoint, I'm thinking when you dysfunction means not functioning, right? So
Right.
if something doesn't function, you can't fix it. But when you have executive function weakness, it's a skill that can be learned. And a lot of people don't think about social skills as skills that can be learned. Can you talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, and first I want to say what you're doing is really important. So you can have more Caroline than a lot of people. So I can come back.
Yay!
But so there's a couple of things. When I did my master's degree, I designed it myself. And I went to Lesley University in Boston, and my focus was executive function and early childhood development. And so one reason I say executive function weakness is it's a spectrum. So you can have, so one of the misnomers perpetrated in the media that drives me bonkers is this idea that everybody is the same with ADHD. We're all disorganized, we're all dysregulated emotionally, and it really isn't like that. Executive function is the management system of the brain, and it controls its processes in the brain that all come together, right? So just in case, because some physicians don't know this, but here's what it is. It's a spectrum. So you may have weakness in one area and not in another. And you might even have strength in another. And so I feel like to say some of the things that people say, it goes against women like me, where I am very organized. I actually probably would be considered like hyper organized. But I always say to people that I have a very complicated life. I have a husband who runs his own business. I can't be disorganized,
Right.
But I do have areas of weakness, like emotional. And so part of this is like these skills can be built. You're building new pathways in the brain, and they can be taught, but they have to be taught to some people through direct instruction or basically developing these strategies like you use. And when we think about it, we often think about it in terms of telling kids, stop being so messy. You can't be late all the time or you won't have a job. Colleges don't like this or that. And we don't think of it more as skill building. So think of the things you want your child to know before they go to college. How to change a tire, right? How to make a doctor's appointment, right? I am the child of a librarian. So by the way, physicians, your kid probably doesn't know how to make a doctor's appointment. I went to college and I didn't know how to do research because my mom had always done it for me as the head librarian at Boston College. Those things are skills we teach. This is the same. But as per the questions that Lollie sent me, we have to reach the child. And so we have to do some things that I'm happy to talk about to get them to listen to us, to teach those executive function skills.
I absolutely agree with everything you said about that. And one of the reasons why this is also important to talk about, we were talking about this earlier, is that we know, like, a lot of the questions families always ask me is like, my kids is so emotional, I don't know what to do with it. And, and a lot of these kids, believe it or not, are either dealing with their own inner, I call it inner demons or concerns that we can't get to because we interpret, what we see. Like our perception is not the kid's reality. And a lot of these kids I find are very lonely. Some have become suicidal. I've had people reach out to me and say, their kids are depressed, they don't know what to do, they're at their wits' end. And combine that with kids who have ADHD, and we know the association with ADHD with the higher incident of successful suicide and the increased suicide rates in general among children. I'm talking children as young as 10 and 11, right? So this really hits home for me. And I do think every parent, even if you don't believe in coaching, this is something you can like get the book, work on it, and essentially self-coach your child. You know, some people will need to get a formal coach, right? But the most important thing with what you said is realizing that this is a skill you can build, because that's the first step, like changing that mindset that, oh, that's just how she is. Another thing you mentioned in the book was, oh, she will outgrow it, but then you have this lag time of years where there hasn't been much done. Okay, so we had so many questions, and I don't I don't even know where to start, but I figured let's start with the younger ones. Okay.
Okay.
So someone sent a message saying, I would love to have tips for success starting in younger kids, like 5 years old. He's always saying everyone is mean to him. Neuropsych observation is that he just does chase play. Our observation is he gets stuck on an idea, and when someone would do it his way, he melts down. What do you have to say about that?
Okay,
That sounds
so
like my house.
I love this question because it's something that so many parents can learn from. And so I'm so excited that they asked it. A few things. One, one of the reasons I want parents to learn how to coach is because we have to reach the child and we have to shift their mindset. And so, I'm all for you hiring a professional coach. You can reach out to either one of us and we'll help you get a professional coach who's certified. However, when we're not there as professional coaches, someone has to have daily conversations.
Absolutely.
What you're hearing in this question, I find a lot. So there's a bunch of executive functions and there's a bunch of things here. Inflexibility. Remember, when kids have low self-awareness, which is a very common trait of ADHD, and it can be because of maturity, like a lack of maturity, immaturity, and weaker executive function, one of the things that happens is they don't understand relationships and the social world. And so the technique I use that is a coaching technique of asking them questions and asking them to step into other people's shoes is going to be essential here, because we're going to have to reach this child. If you are partnering with him, if you are doing fun things with him, if you are not his friend, you're his parent, but you have intimacy and trust, right? And if you don't, we rebuild the relationship.
Absolutely.
And don't always talk about weaknesses, okay? So this is a common thing we do as parents. I'm totally guilty of it too. We get up tomorrow and we try to do better, which is we talk about the elephant in the room and we talk about what the kid does wrong. You always do this, you always do that. We're not going to do that. We're not also going to directly say to this kid, you chase people and you chase them away, right? When I read this question, I was like, oh, got to make sure to say that. What we want to do is start asking him questions about his social role. What do you think people feel? And then what does it feel like when he's so upset about the way things are going? He wants things to go his way, which shows his cognitive inflexibility. While No Play With Me has a ton of fun lessons for building flexibility. A very simple thing too is whenever you catch your child being flexible, and you can make jokes to the other children in the house too, is to say, I love it when you're flexible. Oh my God, that was so much flexibility. Thanks so much for helping mom out with that. And you can jokingly say it to your spouse, your partner, your other kids. It should be that every kid is working on stuff too. We don't want to just target this one ADHD kid and be like, Simon has to work on stuff because he has ADHD. No, everybody can be working on something.
No, I think that question was amazing. And when I saw that question, there was a kid in a book that loved a particular show. and with the cousins, that kid. It kind of reminded me of it because everybody saw him as, you're so inflexible. Whereas asking your child why helps you get to the bottom of it. Like it wasn't just about that thing. It's amazing. Um, so the next one said, I have a 7-year-old, and how do I teach him how to have insight about the differences to be able to talk about them openly? I try to say our heads get ahead of our body, but it's hard. I just don't, the ability to communicate it. And I want to mention that this person asking this question is a general pediatrician. So just for people who are listening who are not physicians, if you hear this, don't feel like you're alone. It's just because I don't know. Like we are all parents and we're all learning.
Yeah, a couple things came to mind when I heard this question. There's a very famous social skills coach called Michelle Garcia Winner who's in the autism space. And one of the things she always says when I worked for her, I liked, which is your brain does some things well and your brain struggles with some things. And what I liked about that was I feel like it detaches a bit so that it's not like, oh, you have this problem. It's like, wow, you are a Lego king. Your brain does math easily. Your brain does theater easily, but this is a struggle. I also, with little ones, don't always label the ADHD. There's parents who really don't want to. We talk about focus problems, and we talk about your focus, your bossing your body. We all have to be working on something. I tend to talk about it in terms of, how so-and-so has a tutor for reading, or mom has to call the Apple Care line, or whatever. We called a plumber this time. You're going to go see a doctor, or we're having someone work with you for, that's the thing you're getting some help with. Yeah, I try to pave a lot. And my biggest tip to all parents and all physicians is the more we talk about getting help in daily life, like it almost feels a little bit like a skit, but it really does work. The more kids don't see their own challenges as like, I'm the only one. So as parents, we need to talk about, I have a challenge with, managing myself. I have a challenge with, filtering what I say. I have a challenge with math, whatever it is, so that they can hear that when we have a challenge, we get help. Right?
I absolutely agree with that because as kids, before preteen years, kids see us as their superheroes, right? So if your superhero also has a challenge with this, then they don't feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me, right? Oh, mommy has to go to the doctor for this or that, and just be more open about it. I totally agree with you. I really don't like the label either, especially in little kids. And then it gets thrown around a lot, but focusing on the problem we want to work on helps a lot.
And I think also, the one thing I do once they know the label is I do prepare kids for the stigma. So when my own daughter was diagnosed with ADHD, she lived in a world where Ned Hollowell was her friend. She goes to his Christmas party. She thinks that it's just great. He made a video at age 6 about how it was a superpower, ADHD. Like, she didn't have the negative feelings about it because she lived with me. So she was like, I'm part of the tribe. However, when she went to school and she announced it, people called me and people said things to her. And I was shocked that they did, knowing I'm her mother, and that I would be like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
But she came home and I just had a talk with her. And I've had this talk now, like with, so many parents, advising them, where I just explained to her that there are people who don't believe. And just to prepare her and to say, that doesn't mean we don't believe. And you can use concrete examples from your life. We believe in, God, we believe in this, we believe in vaccination. There are people who don't, whatever you want to use. But I do think sometimes, depending on the age, if we're going to tell them the label, We do have to prepare them, but also give them the science. I show kids the brain. I show them all the information, and they get it. They get it. And that way they know their superpowers, their strengths, and how their brain works. And then I tell them all about all the amazing people in history who have ADHD, like, Winston Churchill and things like that.
That's perfect. I know some people like to tell their kids, some people don't, but whichever way you go, I think preparation is always important. And sometimes some parents don't know how to tell their kids. That's where you get either a coach involved, or some child care specialists in the hospitals are usually good at explaining diagnosis with kids as well. All right. This one was interesting because we dealt with it too. Our children's perception of friends versus reality. My son thinks he has no friends, and this stresses him, but he really does. He just doesn't recognize it. If one thing goes wrong, that friendship is still, he doesn't recognize that if something goes wrong, that friendship is still there. So discussing how to help them with this challenge and change his perspective. How do we go about it? And I'm going to tie that with the next question, which is somewhat similar, but it said, how do you approach a 9-year-old girl who seems to have friends, but I can see they're starting to get annoyed with her? So one is the perception they don't have a friend, one has friends, but mom is kind of like, oh, if I was your friend, I may not appreciate some things you're doing as well.
Yeah, and I think with the I don't have friends, but they really do. I've run into this a lot, and usually those kids are actually really sensitive, and they usually, are reading the room. And I was like this as a kid. My problem wasn't I didn't read the room. My problem was I read the room too well. So when you tried to tell me some adult thing like this isn't true, I was like, it is true, because I saw the look on his face. And I remember yesterday when he said this and da 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 da. And so when a kid is sensitive, sometimes their radar is just almost overactive. And they may couple that, and I don't know, because I don't know this kid, but this is what I've seen a lot, with an over sense of rejection, an overly active limbic and emotional system, so that they take everything to heart. Every fight is the end of the world. And they tend to be the kind of kids who worry a lot, even if they don't tell you. So my first thing would be, I would love to know, how come this kid says he has no friends, right? And like, the one thing I would say to parents is, sometimes we see kids as having friendships and we think we know everything. And then when we actually have those conversations with them, so do something fun with them, talk about it in the minivan if you need to, talk about it in a place where he's comfortable. What are his friendships like, and what do they do or not do for him? Because the one thing is, we're looking and saying he has friends, he's with all these kids. Maybe they leave him out. Maybe they don't fulfill him. Maybe he sees how they slight. If he's very sensitive, he might see how they slight him, and he might not. He might be like overly sensitive, but he also might be like, right. So intuition. I want to know that, right? I want to know that, like, yeah, they invite me everywhere, and then they don't. I had a girl tell me this once. They invite me everywhere, and then they ghost me. They don't talk to me. I'm just there. So remember that. And then for the one who doesn't see them alienating people, this is also very, very common. We don't want to tell her that she's alienating people. What we want to do is use the open questions, which is questions that begin with what, how come kind of questions, to ask her and to start to educate her about other people's feelings, her role in the social world. Right. What do people like? And what I always say to parents is, use TV and real life. When Uncle Murray is obnoxious at Christmas, you are coaching and partnering with your kid, and you are their coach, and you're whispering to them, what do you think people feel about what Uncle Murray just said, right? You're watching Survivor. There's always one person who cannot get along with everybody, and they do alienating things. You ask your kid, hey, what do you think about that? I understand your kid may do every single alienating thing that another kid you're talking about does. It's okay. Don't point the finger. Just start to raise their awareness and their mindset that when you do X, people have feelings about it. And then you'll get to the point where you can work on the alienating behaviors eventually. But you have to start by getting that kid to connect the dots that, like, look how when Uncle Murray says this stuff, other people have feelings. And hold back a little bit. Don't say you're just like, don't do that, because then their deflector shield goes up.
Absolutely. You know, it's it's so funny, even for adults, right? Even like in coaching, if you do not have the awareness of the situation, you can fix it. And unfortunately and fortunately, all parents do this, right? Like when something happens, we rush straight to the solution. But when the child doesn't even understand what you're saying or understand why it's a big deal or understand why this is so bad, then you have that hurdle, and then you receive that back as she doesn't listen to me. She doesn't listen to me, you know. So that's why it's important to break that barrier first of awareness. I totally agree with that. Um, so this one was quite interesting. It was very long, but I'll take the key things out of it. Um, the mom who thinks she's probably has ADHD as well. 3 out of 3 kids have ADHD. Husband has ADHD, but their biggest struggle is their emotion, mainly temper and study impulse control. And you can imagine how upsetting that can be in the house. They struggle with regulating their emotion, expressing what they're actually feeling rather than defensive emotion. They do much better with medicine, but as we've talked about a lot of times, ADHD, go standard of treatment, yes, medicine, but coaching and the skills building all play hand in hand with it. And she's basically like, how can she work with this as a mom who's trying and who probably has an ADHD too, but she has to hold it down for the family because we're all at each other right now. How do we get through that?
So the first thing I want to say is that you are going to give your kid the greatest gift of all, because even though this is hard right now, you're going to teach them techniques that I'm going to talk about in a second that will last a lifetime, and things will get better, right? So you're dealing with a lot of executive function weakness, right there. And you know, medication is great, but it doesn't last 24 hours, which is something that this mother brought up. One of the techniques that I love to use in these kind of situations is from Dr. Ross Green, and it's called collaborative problem solving. So there's 2 prongs. One is we're going to have times when we sit down with kids about their individual challenge or behavior, and we talk about, and Dr. Green has literally YouTubes on this, but I'll just give the high level. We talk about the problem and we try to collaboratively problem solve. We're not blaming, but like, we can't miss the bus every day. Or you say you won't work on some of these calming techniques I want us to work on as a family, but I can't have you screaming all the time at your brothers. So what can we do here together? And it is okay in this technique to basically say, I need you to work on this. Because one of the things that we need to do is the second prong, which is to bring in some self-regulation skills. And I have a lot about this on my Instagram, author Caroline M, that I've been making. I've only been doing Instagram like 6 months, but I'm enjoying it because I make like individual videos about this stuff. We want to start bringing in these self-regulation teaching techniques And people call them calming techniques, but really what it is that when they get to the point of yelling, it's that their activation levels and the arousal in their brain gets so high. And so we need to bring in preemptively some ways that we have as strategies where when it gets to a certain point, we all agree we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And if I give you this code word, you're going to take a break. Now, I want to tell you something because I don't want people to think I'm delusional. There is a syndrome in our ADHD kids and parents and families called pursuer distancer dynamic. And this is what it is. I ask you to take 5 and let's take a break. And you follow me around asking me when we can order the toy. And this never happens in my house. I mean, it happens every day. And I say to you, I'm losing it. I really need a break. I would like you to go to your Zen corner and I'm going to go to mine. And the kid follows you and they will not leave you alone. Everybody says, oh, you don't have to make a decision with discipline if you're angry. But there's certain kids who will literally hound you. Tell me, am I being grounded? Tell me, am I being grounded? This is called the pursuer distancer dynamic, and it's something Dr. John Gottman talks about a lot. He talks about it in terms of couples, but it absolutely applies to kids and parents. Part of it is that some of us like to be close, and I've never been like this to my poor mother. We don't want to be told that we're going to have space. And something about, we're the pursuer, something about you saying we're going to take 5 feels like the edge of the world to us. And we don't, 5 minutes is so long and I need your answer. And we're all revved up and we're dysregulated. So instead, I have this on my website, but instead of saying 5 minutes, say you can stay with me, but we're not going to talk. And do smaller increments, 1 minute. And when they're calm after, and it's the right time, have a talk and explain this dynamic to them. When I explain this to kids, do you know what they say to me? Oh my gosh, is that why I do that? And it's important. Here's why I bring it up. It's important because I do not want them to do this with their spouse, right? I want them to learn I'm a pursuer or I'm a distancer. I want you to get away. And so part of what's happening in this person's house is going to be a multi-pronged approach to make things better. And if you want to write me, right, for more information, feel free, check out the videos. You're doing a great job though. Like you thinking about this and trying to make it better, this is incredible. You're giving your kids such a gift because you don't want them to not have these skills and you're going to give them these skills.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you're working with kids. And when you just talked about, you don't want them to do it to the spouse. And it just hit me because I'm like, that's why we do this, right? Like I always say, I'm not raising chickens, I'm raising adults with my kids. Because whatever I'm doing, I'm thinking about the future. What kind of adult do I want them to be? So starting with that coaching right now, with whatever spectrum of ADHD, or even if they don't have ADHD and they just have some kind of emotional regulation or emotional weakness that we need to work on, it's important, again, time, not say, oh, we're just gonna let them outgrow it, working on it right now. I thank you for saying that. Like it's so important. All right. I really wish we had all day. I'm looking at the time. Oh my gosh, we don't have it. So
Can
I'm gonna yes.
Can I say
go ahead.
one thing?
Please, Jo.
Here's a distinction I want to make for everybody that I think as physicians too, they need to learn. Parents sitting with them and doing everything is not a strategy and it's not a path forward. So if parents are coming to you and they say, well, we've worked it out. You know, I sit in my daughter's room all night long and I'm her body double and she does her homework. Now, but this is a real stuff people tell me. I help to calm her down 13 times a night at college and therefore she has made friends. that is enabling, and it's not a path forward. And I get why we do it, right? And my mom, by the way, did a lot of this stuff for me, right? But I always joke with the kids I work with, I'm not going to college with you. You're going to retire me. I'm not going to be with you forever, right? I want kids to have strategies, and I want them to learn skills. So if you're feeling like, you know, a family is talking to you and their strategy is for the parent to basically be with the kid for the rest of their lives, that's not a path forward. We are not going to be in our children's marriages, you know?
Absolutely. I love that, because we need to work on whatever it is where we are with this children from a place of empowerment and not enablement, right? Um, and I love that line about not following you to college. I say something similar to my kids. Like, even sometimes when people are like, oh, they do this already. And I'm like, yes, I'm raising adults. You know, like, they're not going to be 10, 9, 11, 12 forever. I want them to be able to have the skills, and not to be morbid, right? We may not be here forever.
Yeah.
So who's going to stay in the room with them when I'm not here?
Right. Right.
So, so that's why it's so important that we really empower them. I really appreciate that. So the next one, we're going now. We're going age wise. I don't know if you noticed. Um, um, so someone said, and this really broke my heart when I read it. What do you recommend for teenagers who have struggled for years and continue to get rejected by their peers, even to the point of being suicidal?
Yeah, that touched me too, even though I really literally hear about this all day, every day. I definitely, my heart went out. And so here's the first thing I want to say. Obviously, people have to take care of the depression first, but we also have to give people hope. I want to first work on their social mindset, and you can find how to coach and ask those open questions in the book. Because if people are rejected, especially actively, that usually means they're doing something to alienate people. And it's very, very heartbreaking. Some of the kids I work with call themselves ghosts, and they are ignored, and they wish to be bullied. And I'm always like, don't wish to be bullied.
Oh no.
But they feel just as alone. But kids who are actually alienated and feel that active bullying and that active thing, there is research that shows that actually kids who are bullied are usually kids who have behaviors that are alienating, right? Like for me, I think it was my mouth, truthfully. I think I just was like too honest and too blunt. And no one was going to think I was a ghost, right? So I want to give them hope around their strengths. And I also want to, before I just plop them in yet another activity, yet another college, I want to build those skills. It starts with the mindset of what are the rules of the social world? What are people's expectations? What do people feel about things? And then to like do the questionnaire, and why will no one play with me? And it will lead you through the skill building. You can hire a coach to help him with his skills.
Mhm.
But you can also do it yourself if resources are not available. Or I want to say this because a lot of parents are going to say, my kid won't go to anybody. One reason I wrote the book is that a lot of the kids I work with and a lot of the kids I've seen, they are not going to go to someone. They are so embarrassed about this. So if that's the case, and as a parent, you can do this. Especially if a kid is really suffering, a lot of times they are my most eager clients because they want things to change.
Right.
And it can change, right? It really can. I've seen this thousands of times, but we got to start with getting that depression under control and giving him a place to shine, Like everybody has a superpower. What's the
Absolutely.
superpower?
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And one thing, and from a medical standpoint too, is this is one where, we talk about ADHD, you need coach, you need medication. This is one where you also need a therapist.
Yes.
You need the whole, in medicine, we talk about something called the medical home where you have your primary doctor and your specialist and your this and your social worker and your this. This is one where you need a mental health home where the coach is talking to the therapist is talking to the psychiatrist, and we all come together to help him or her or they. Situation though, I see some kids who they're like, I've tried everything. I'm done. I'm tired. Nothing works, right? Like, especially that 15, 16, 17 year where they're like, I'm over it. I'm done. Coached a client the other day that was going through something like that. And the one question I asked them was, what if this time was different? What if today is the beginning of the rest of your life? What if you actually got what you wanted? And that sometimes may shift their brain into thinking, okay, maybe I'll do it one more time. Because that's another thing I hear from parents who have teenage kids. It's like they don't want to hear it. They're over it. They've used medicine, they've done this, but a lot of them have not done coaching. And when their parents bring up coaching, because they don't understand what that is either, they're like, nope, I don't want to do it. you know.
And here's what I'd say too. No really means I don't think there's hope. So here's one thing I talk about in the book. They would do it if they could do it. And one of the things that happens is that they have tried a lot, but what they've tried haven't actually been the right ways to do this. And when kids are shut down, it always means that they have had a hard time. So I talk about this on my Instagram, which is to do micro connections. So micro steps. I'm not asking you to go to a clinic. I'm not asking you to sign up for a social skills group. I'm asking you to have a 5-minute conversation with me about this. Or I'm doing something fun with you, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about the social world. You can go and not speak to anyone. Like, one of the things I do with a lot of my clients who are sort of like, a lot of my clients aren't like, oh, I love you, Caroline. Parents beg me, they write me these emails. I read your book. Will you please work with me? And then I get the kid, and the kid is like, I really don't like you. I don't really want to be here. This is my mom's idea, right? So I always joke, most of my clients are like thrilled to be with me. They're like, I don't like you at all. So it just means that they don't feel hope, that they feel shut down. And so part of what I have to do is help them to shift their mindset and realize that they haven't really tried everything. And one of the ways in, by the way, parents, is interest. Get them doing things that are fun and getting them enjoying things and having that intimacy with you so that you can talk about all this stuff. But yeah, it's really hard. And with teenagers especially, remember, think about this. Your entire developmental piece when you're a teenager is to be with a peer group. Now think they don't have one. They're so embarrassed.
Right.
It's like when people lose, you know how they say when men lose their jobs and when people don't have jobs, it's like really affects their self-esteem. This is their sole purpose as a teenager, and they don't have any friends. It's heartbreaking for them. So we have to get in, but it takes time.
Absolutely. It takes time, but the time starts now.
Do it. Don't let it go.
And
Please do not let it go. DM me. I will help you. Don't let this go.
That's the thing. I'm like, if you could take anything out of the conversation we have today, is start now. Go get the book. Start now. There is hope. I don't want you to, even if your child gives up on themselves, I don't want you as a parent to give up on the situation because there is hope out there for them. I'm gonna ask a couple more questions and then we'll round up. So there are a couple that kind of repeated, but this one says, how can we support children who begin life similarly? Oh, no, we talked about yours. Sorry, that's not the one I want to talk about. What can parents do to help facilitate support and decrease conflict with teachers at school when they, aka that's the school administrators and teachers, are not well versed in neurodiversity and used to seeing ordinary student with attention issues but not behavioral symptoms of ADHD?
So the parents I know who are my heroes are the ones who raise money and bring psychosocial education to their schools. And I really see the effect of this. And I'll just give a personal example. I live in a little weird vortex where a very famous executive function coach, Sarah Ward, Ned Hollowell, Michael Thompson, who wrote Raising Cain, all surround this like Metro West area of Boston.
Oh, wow.
There are, of course, people who say insensitive things and, at the Pets food store, they make jokes about ADHD. Like, it's not like we're perfect, but they've been doing all this education for years in the schools, which means that even the haters pretend to be likers. A lot of the coaches I train go out and they're like pioneers wherever they are, and they're bringing education to the school, and they're bringing these topics and bringing in speakers or speaking themselves. And so my thing is, the first thing is, whenever you have a child, and I hate the word disability, but I'm going to use it here for a reason. With a disability mom and dad 101 is you get involved with the schools so they know you. Because if they know you, they're less likely to say insensitive, awful things. They treat your child differently. I'm sorry, but it's studied. It's a fact.
Facts. Yeah.
You're able, like I spent years on the PTG. It was like ADHD torture, but I did it. So I was also on the committee to return to school after COVID for Massachusetts, like took years off my life. Literally, I would have to scream into a pillow. But the more you're involved, then you can bring stuff. And you get a personal relationship. Like the principal of my daughter's elementary school used to say to me, I know you have an agenda. And my agenda was I wanted to bring stand-up desks to every grade in the elementary school.
Oh.
And she would get annoyed with me, but she was seeing me every month and she knew me and I was volunteering. So she might have never responded to my emails, but now she has a little bit of a jokey relationship with me, and she'd be like, I know you have an agenda. And I was like, yes, I do. So that's my biggest thing, is that it's lack of education, right? And then I always say, just whenever you can, be like, oh, well, as you know, right? And then bring in the education. As you know, it's a deficit of interest. As you know, they can pay attention when they're interested. Bring it in whenever you can. Bring in stuff the teacher wants to. If the teacher wants something, you are bringing that to the classroom.
And I'm going to talk for the busy mom like me that is not involved with PTA. Even if you're not involved with PTA and can get in and can, some adults have social issues and can't do it, still go in and advocate for your children.
Oh, yeah.
Like the principal knows me. I may not go to every PTA stuff, but when something's wrong with my child, they know Dr. Akitoya is sending an email and she's calling somebody because she does not play with her children. Either you want to believe it or not, the kids that get paid attention to are the ones where the parents are very involved or very, if you don't do what you need to do with my children, I'm not saying it doesn't have to be negative or whatever, but they know that, okay, if I don't agree with something, I will let them know about it. So there are times where they email me ahead of time, preemptively, just so you know, this happened, this is how it happened, and blah, blah, blah. And I think it's very important as parents to try as much as possible to be involved, because at the end of the day, it helps your child overall more than you would like to even know. It does a whole lot. And education is big. Just like we talked about the kids having awareness, education for the people teaching your children, right? Because they have to know what works for your children. They have to know, okay, these are the kind of things that works for her based on her brain, if the teachers don't know. Because let's face it, teachers are not paid enough to also be an expert on ADHD.
Yeah.
They should know enough, but just about too, ADHD is a wide spectrum. So it's up to you as a parent, after you've educated yourself about your child, also go let the teacher know that these are some certain things to look at. If it's the emotional part of it, let them know about it as well. All right. Oh my gosh. I'm going to ask one more question. Is that okay before we
Yes,
round
totally fine. My husband took over. I heard him take over. He was a good boy.
up? All right. So the last one is, and this is something I talked to people about already, but I just want them to hear from yourself. How do you find an effective ADHD coach? Or therapists who understand ADHD. I feel like the ones who understand ADHD do a better job because they have the insight and they can process the emotion. So coach and therapist.
So for the therapist, I always say ask other parents whose kids are seeing someone, or you suspect, or just just casually, hey, do you know anyone? Other parents to me are like the greatest resource in terms of, don't take them to so and so. They don't really know. They think they do. For the coach part, what I with this question, I was like, okay, so I have to admit my bias. I own part of a coach training program, right? But I think the biggest thing for me is that they should be certified by the International Coach Federation. And I'll just give you as parents an example. People who train with me have already gone through basic coach training, and then they go through 56 sessions learning about kids and families and all the things we've talked about tonight. So if I look at 56 sessions versus a weekend, right? So I would ask them what kind of training they had, where they trained, and I would also ask them questions. So the coaches that I train at the ADD Coach Academy do very, very well and are always booked and always have a wait list. And I've been trying to figure out why, and I think I finally cracked it. I think the reason is that they are trained well and they have a lot of knowledge. So when they get on the phone with a parent, the parent asks some questions like we did tonight, and they're able to answer them. So if you are talking to a coach and you are going to bring up, for instance, my kid isn't really into this, like, make sure they can really answer what they're going to do to get this kid on board. And also, if you ask me, I would say, well, they have to be willing. I can't strong arm them. So what kind of answers do they give? And by the way, if they pretend they do all walks of coaching, I would be suspicious, because kids and family is a very specific knowledge.
Very niche.
And I think, if you're going to tell me that you do everything, the only exception is there are coaches in some countries where, like, they are the only coach in Saudi Arabia. And they have no choice but to service everybody until we get more people there. So, but really, they should have this as their niche and their primary focus.
Absolutely. And for people who weren't here when if you're listening in the middle, so Caroline actually created the course. So you guys and I talk about ADD Coaching Academy all the time. That's where I train. Fantastic program. Even me as a physician, when I got there, I was like, every doctor should should go to APCA, even if it's just simply and there's a course called Simply ADHD and Personal Transformation, which is like the intro course. Even before you begin your basic coaching, and I did basic coaching training and advanced coaching training. Um, and Caroline she created the family coaching program that hundreds of coaches have now gone through. So not only is she knowledgeable, she's an expert. So when I say I'm bringing an expert, I'm not just saying that. And I just appreciate you spending your evening with us. You don't know how much I appreciate it. I know you said you'll come back. I might take you up on that offer.
I will. I will,
I might
because I want to reach physicians and I want to reach parents. And this is my mission. I know that I could have done anything. I could have stayed at Johnson & Johnson or whatever, but I was very bored. But I want to reach people so that they have answers. And you are doing that as well. You and I have a very shared mission. I want every pediatric office to have the materials I have for physicians and have a copy of Why Will No One Play With Me. I'm not kidding, because I'll go on to write other books. This will still always be, to me, the most important book I'll ever write, because it is a guide. It is everything you need to know. And if you want, you can listen to it, because you and I usually listen to books. You bought it, thank you, but you usually listen, and so do I.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I started listening and I just wanted to oh my God, this is like medical school all over again. I wanted to highlight, I wanted to cross, if you can, well, I kind of hyper focused on it, but you could take it one step at a time and work on your child. You don't have to finish it all in a week or a month. You could just listen to it and work on it, and listen to it and work with it one at a time so it doesn't get overwhelming. So I always ask all my guests this, because majority of the people that listen to this have ADHD. They probably forgot what we said in the beginning. So if you could pick one thing, if you don't get anything out of this whole conversation, this is the one thing I want you to take out of it, what would that be?
It would be that you are your child's original teacher. And no matter how much they say, I got this, they usually don't. You have a special, intimate relationship with them. And if you don't, let's repair it. Because you are their original teacher. You taught them to walk. You taught them to hold a cup. You taught them all the things they needed to know. And this is tough, but you are the best one to teach them. I really believe that. I know people say, oh, everybody has to go to a professional. Kids don't listen to their parents. Okay, but then how do they learn how to hold a cup? They do listen to you, right? They are listening even when they shut you out, and you continuing to advocate for them. They will remember that when they're 40. I remember it. And you are their teacher. Don't ever surrender the conversation, but have it in a different way, which I teach you in the book.
Absolutely. Can we do a mic drop, boom? That was like the perfect mic drop right there. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on our podcast. We would definitely love to have you back. Can you please let people know how to get in touch with you? I'm definitely putting the Amazon link, or whichever link you want me to put on, I'll definitely put in our show notes. That way people can grab this amazing book. How can people reach you?
So if you go to author Caroline M on Instagram, Facebook, anywhere, you can DM me. And if you want to go to my website, CarolineMaguireAuthor.com, or just Google Why Will No One Play With Me, and it will all come up. I have a ton of free resources on my website, and I even have videos of me coaching real kids. I have spent the past few years filming very willing kids and very willing, wonderful families so that you can see real people doing this. And by the way, some of them are not like, oh yeah, I love you, Caroline. I just did a TED Talk. So if you Google Caroline Maguire becoming a social spy, that will come up, and I'll give Dr. Lola the links. But really reach out, because I really love to hear from people, and I will make videos about what you asked me without your name, of course.
Absolutely, absolutely. Please, please, please. I'm gonna put all her information in the show notes. As you guys know, love what Caroline said about, try to find a coach that's their niche. I would be the first one to say, while I'm a pediatrician, I'm a pediatric cardiology. Kids are actually not my niche. I find it way too close to home for me, and my niche is adults and women. So if you're a mom or an adult or a woman who has ADHD or just wants some life coaching, I am your girl. Reach out to me. If you have kids and you want to discuss with Caroline, please reach out to her. She is so personable and reachable and just all around amazing. So I just want to thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you again for coming to our
No
show
problem.
today. All right, everybody. Till next time, I want you to remember you can do it too with some planning, a little bit of balance, and a dash of determination. This is LollieTasking.
Thanks for hanging out with us on another episode of LollieTasking with ADHD. If you like what you've heard today, I would love for you to click the subscribe button, rate, and leave a great review, in addition to sharing with your friends. Your review allows visibility and also allows other amazing women to find this podcast. Also, if you have any questions or topics you would like for us to discuss, please contact me via direct message on Instagram at LollieTasker or email us at hello@LollieTasking.com. Till next time, this is LollieTasking with ADHD.